United States Army. 236 years of battle-hardened history. The most powerful military in the world. As America's largest armed force, the men and women of the U.S. Army are the flesh and bone of our nation's military.
This is my favorite part about the Army. Definitely like the live fire. It makes everything worth it.
And the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, is where they come to prepare for war.
Enemy on that side.
This is Live Fire, U.S. Army, Urban Combat. The National Training Center at Fort Irwin, one of the largest military reservations in the United States. Located in the brutal Mojave Desert, Fort Irwin is roughly the size of Rhode Island and includes both live-fire target ranges and full-scale urban combat environments. It's one of the U.S. Army's most vital resources. Every month, a full combat brigade arrives at the National Training Center, where American soldiers go to war and fight each other. Fort Irwin is home to one of the Army's most famous units, the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, known as the Black Horse. The 11th ACR started on horseback in the early 1900s. Later, they traded their horses for tanks to serve under legendary General George S. Patton in World War II and Patton's son, George Jr., in Vietnam. Now, their mission is to help train their fellow soldiers for the challenges they will face on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan. Right now, the soldiers of the 1st Armored Division's 4th Brigade Combat Team from Fort Bliss, Texas, feel the heat of Fort Irwin. Captain David Brown commands one of the brigade's companies.
They're counting many hardships. One is being away from home. The good thing is for us is the ability to focus the soldier on his task. We're able to take away all the other sidebars and put them into, hey, this is what your job is. And we're able to train each soldier for that task. The purpose of NTC is to prepare us for a deployment in the future, and it replicates all of that. A year deployment built into 14 days.
Medina Wassel, 8 a.m. Captain Brown's unit, the headquarters battery of an artillery regiment, is preparing to tackle one of Fort Irwin's 9 urban combat training sites. Within minutes, an improvised explosive device, or IED, will detonate. Then, each platoon from Brown's unit will have to make their way into the village to rescue 2 soldiers that have been wounded by the roadside bomb. And then the unit will have to battle its way out. Captain Matthew Tillman is a 7-year Army veteran and a medical company trainer at the National Training Center.
Our intent here is to take the worst day a unit could possibly have in Iraq and simulate it so that we save lives on the battlefield. The more realism we can add here, the better off we'll be. That's why we use real amputees. We have makeup artists that are trained and used in Hollywood productions. We use pyrotechnics that are used in Hollywood productions.
That's why you hit him. It's his weapon.
Sergeant First Class Salvatore DIGAETANO is a 10-year Army veteran and former Marine.
You stand up, aim, and then I want the soldiers to see you. I want them to see you. Because if they see you, I want them to kill you.
A combat medic by trade, at Medina Wassel, DIGAETANO's job combines his combat experience with the role of a movie director.
I've been stationed here for 1 year, came here straight from Iraq. What I do is I facilitate and I train the unit as they're coming through. It's an urban mounted patrol lane. We have role players who are just regular English-speaking role players who know minimal Arabic, and then we have a couple of Arabic-speaking role players who I call them the stars of my show, and they're the ones that get everybody incited up in Arabic, and whenever there's any type of chanting going on, they'll start the chanting in Arabic and everyone else will follow.
Because some of Fort Irwin's role players are Iraqi nationals who still have family back home, their faces must be blurred to protect their loved ones. Other role players include the actors who will portray the insurgents, the local police, and the Iraqi army. These are all U.S. Army soldiers and are the only role players allowed to carry guns during the training.
I prefer only soldiers shooting at soldiers. That's the way I like it. All the combat trainers were all combat veterans. Amputees, they're strictly civilians. We don't want to use soldiers for that. We don't want to bring back any bad memories.
Sergeant DIGAETANO and his team will run this exercise 4 times a day for 10 days straight.
When they hear the explosion happen, that's when the rescue mission happens. The whole Saving Private Ryan, if you'd say. That's when you got to come in, got to come get those casualties and get out.
As each unit fights their way into town, they'll be facing both an angry crowd of civilians and a potential ambush by enemy machine guns and snipers.
I have ambushes set up for them all over the place. I have my RPGs on wires. I have what's called an RKG-3. It's a handheld grenade that is an anti-armor grenade. So I've thrown everything at them that I possibly can.
The soldiers involved with the training are all armed with the M4 carbine, basically a more compact version of the M16. But instead of firing live ammunition at their comrades, the guns are loaded with Hollywood blanks. The soldiers also use a system called miles on miles for figuring out who gets hit in battle.
It's like a giant laser tag system. It allows us to replicate engagements of small arms as well.
They're all wearing these Miles vests right here. So when this unit is fired, the laser emits, hits here, and they hear this annoying laser that comes out, this annoying beeping that comes out of the back of this thing right here. Get back about 20 meters and shoot at your buddy. So he's gonna get fired upon, and his miles are gonna go off, and you'll hear that sound. A lot of the times they're wearing hearing protection, and then that's why we use what we call the God gun to shut off the miles. And there we go. And that's how we adjudicate injuries and casualties at the National Training Center, by using miles.
It's very realistic. The only thing you don't really hear is the snap of the bullet over your head. There's amputees, there's explosions next to them, there's gunfire, there's sniper teams, there's RPGs. He is forced to make decisions very quick and under stress.
Ready? Fire!
This is the pivotal training event for an infantry company that comes through the National Training Center. So it's absolutely critical to be able to put together all the pieces that go into an urban fight so we can save lives.
The simulated battle that DIGAETANO and the trainers at Fort Irwin have planned for today recreates the type of scenario that's played out literally hundreds of times during 8 brutal years of combat in Iraq. An improvised explosive device takes out an American convoy, triggering a dangerous rescue operation to evacuate the wounded. Just after 8 a.m., an improvised explosive device detonates in the center of town. Two soldiers are critically injured. Gunfire tears up the streets. Now, Captain Brown's unit pushes into the village to rescue the wounded and destroy the enemy. as fire teams move out to clear the town of machine guns and snipers, medics from 1st Armored attempt to treat the casualties. Under intense fire and facing a mob of angry civilians, the soldiers take out the insurgents and gather their wounded. Their mission is a success.
There were some events that happened today that we did not rehearse. Soldiers stopped and quickly pulled their resources together and their training, and were able to move on.
This was pretty good, actually. For a first time going through here, we have some things that we need to get better at, but that's what we do at the National Training Center.
While Sergeant DIGAETANO's team gets ready for another fight at Medina Wassel, 3 miles east, another unit from the 1st Armored moves into a new town. They have no idea of the kind of hell that waits for them. Medina Jabal, 10 a.m. Role players disguised as civilians and Iraqi police fill the main street of the National Training Center's urban warfare set. Medina Jabal is the largest combat environment at Fort Irwin. Nearly a mile wide, a confusing maze of city streets and alleys, or lanes as the soldiers call them. It's more than 3 times larger than Wassel and has been designed for a very different type of battle. Unlike Wassel's small town setting, Medina Jabal places the soldier into the middle of a city that's about to explode. Since the Iraq War began in 2003, some of the greatest dangers American soldiers have encountered have been in cities like Baghdad and places like Fallujah. For the past 8 years, U.S. troops have had to increase their level of urban warfare training. Captain Eli Rivera is a 13-year Army veteran who's one of the officers in charge of today's training.
What they'll do is units will come through, position themselves, provide security. Once the units come through, the lone unit coming through gets hit by an IED, and that initiates the actual lane.
In a matter of minutes, a unit from the 1st Armored Division will roll into town, unaware of what Rivera has in store for them. They will be under the command of 1st Lieutenant Eric ERNEST.
We're the MP platoon from the Special Troops Battalion of 41AD, stationed out of Fort Bliss, Texas. Overall unit has 37 soldiers here on ground for training. I'm in charge of planning missions and making sure that we execute them according to my higher's commands.
Unlike many of his soldiers, ERNEST has never been in combat. The challenges he faces at Fort Irwin will be a test of how he leads his unit. Like many officers, Lieutenant ERNEST received his commission in college. Ironically, it has long been a tradition that younger officers learn from the soldiers that serve under them.
I've been very fortunate. A lot of my soldiers have been able to teach me a lot because they've all been deployed once or twice already.
And one of those soldiers is Medical Platoon Sergeant Ralph Mendez, who has served multiple tours of duty overseas.
This is my 14th rotation. The training is so realistic, it's amazing. It's totally changed over the years and has prepared us for the things we actually will see.
Just after 10 a.m., Mendez and ERNEST move in.
Friendlies up here, so hey, I'm shooting weapon as people wake up and everything, okay? Roger, that's a good copy. Make sure we're waving to everybody as they're waving to us. It looks like they're welcoming us pretty much. 3, 2, 2. dismount with the interpreter and enter the compound with Sergeant Arm with me.
Just as the rear of the convoy enters town,
All elements, be advised. Get your dismounts out on the ground, link up the IPs and see what we can do to assist.
Got a fire going on, we got a lot of smoke.
a number of role players have been wounded or taken out by the initial explosion of an IED. Now the platoon will have to fight their way back down the street to rescue them.
Where's these wounded at?
Foot soldiers from the convoy, known as dismounts, move in to set up security.
Hey, Darn, set up security around him here. Down. Let it come from.
Enemy snipers and machine gunners catch the dismounts in the open.
Get him behind here. Hey, I need another medic. Over here.
Even though the battle is fake, the tension is real.
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
The troops will have to deal with both their own wounded and the injured civilians. And the more time they spend out in the open, the greater the chance they'll take more casualties and get bogged down.
Get him inside.
While the platoon deals with the chaos on the street, on the rooftops above them, Captain Rivera and the battalion's officers calmly watch the action unfold.
What we look at is to make sure that units provide security before they can actually go into the kill zone and pull out the actual amputees or the wounded that we have on the lane.
Finally, Humvees armed with 50 caliber machine guns lead an ambulance into the scene to extract the wounded.
Okay, roger.
They ride right into another ambush.
Where's that shot coming from? So right behind that building. We have casualties en route. Go ahead and call in a medevac bird. Sir Mendez. How many casualties? Talk to 7.
While the medics treat the wounded and attempt to get them loaded into an ambulance, the MPs and protection personnel provide security with M4 carbines and machine guns.
The integration of the real-life amputees really opened my eyes.
Too much time.
Hey,
Strap him down. We gotta move this vehicle. Let's go.
All the blood, it brought back a lot of memories.
Hey. I got one down by the 606, Sergeant. Let's go. Leave that.
Being a medical platoon sergeant, as I push out and observe, I'm trying to pinpoint the amount of casualties on the ground, triaging them from afar, and trying to decide whom I can get to safety first, who I can reach without being injured myself.
Hurry up, move, soldier. Let's go. Hey, we gonna put him in the vehicle right there.
all right.
Even with the wounded loaded for transport, the troops are not in the clear. Sporadic gunfire pours into the street from enemy positions. More gunfire also means more civilian casualties. An Iraqi ambulance is brought in to care for the wounded civilians. The troops have an angry mob to deal with, as well as enemy combatants. The soldiers are constantly bombarded with a changing situation that closely resembles the kind of chaos that might result during a real firefight.
Yeah, I know.
With all the wounded loaded into ambulances,
Hey, 5 tanks. We need to get a gun truck with you. They're saying the bridge is not clear.
The platoon prepares to leave Medina Jabal. By now, the troops have worn out their welcome. An increasingly restless cast of civilians is giving the platoon its cue that it's time to leave. In this scenario, Jabal's leadership is enraged about the number of civilian casualties.
My apologies for that soldier.
يلا خليفهم كل ما ننزل نور واقفين راح تصير تكثر مشاكل وانفجارات.
If you guys stay here longer, it's gonna be like a lot more like.
Well, we've been given several cultural awareness classes. That way we know the cultures. Some of us are trying to pick up as much Arabic as possible. If I'm going into a city and they speak a different language, just by going in there and knowing a couple key phrases, it's gonna be much more receptive to me.
After an intense 90 minutes, the platoon pulls out of Medina Jabal with all of their casualties. For many of them, it's been a harrowing reminder of the worst-case scenario. And for the newer recruits, an exhausting baptism of fire.
At first, it was really overwhelming. I was like, dear God, everything's, blowing up. It took a second to get my bearings, and we proceeded to do what we were supposed to do.
As the smoke clears of Medina Jabal, 17 miles away, another team from 1st Armored is preparing for a very different type of exercise. This time, the soldiers will be using live ammunition and heavy firepower.
Fire.
Fort Irwin, California. For the past week, soldiers from the U.S. Army's legendary 1st Armored Division have been enduring everything from hellish simulated street combat to intense live fire drills.
Hey, how you doing, kid?
All of it is meant to prepare them for war. Right now, the 4-1 cavalrymen of the Special Troops Battalion are preparing for a live fire exercise on a range known as Puma 1. Their mission? Enter and clear a compound of enemy forces. This will prepare them for the types of house-to-house fighting they might encounter in Iraq.
And what normally happens is units will come in, set up a support by fire with their mounted platforms, dismount infantry squads. The infantry squads will come in, gain a foothold, and conduct battle drill 6, which is enter and clear a room.
Sergeant O. Shin is a native of American Samoa and a 9-year veteran of the U.S. Army. He's already been on 3 deployments to the war zone, and many of his men are combat veterans.
Every 2 years, a unit comes through National Training Center to get certified before they ship out to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Today's exercise will involve Shin's infantrymen, as well as the heavy firepower of 2 Bradley fighting vehicles and a massive M1A2 Abrams tank. While the dismounts assault the compound with rapid-fire M4 carbines, the Bradleys and the Abrams will provide covering fire. The Abrams is the main battle tank of the U.S. military and carries a 120mm main gun as well as 50 caliber machine guns.
In a support by fire, what will happen is one of the vehicles will move up, fire his main gun. In this instance, 120mm tank round with fire. And he'll do what we call a survivability drill, which he'll drive back, and then the 2 supporting Bradleys will move up and engage targets, and then they will flip-flop, so they increase their survivability.
Instead of the blank ammunition used in the simulated battles, the dismounts will fire live rounds at specially designed targets.
Here we have what we call dummy dumpers. They're on magnetic boards, and once a round hits, the target will drop.
I'll keep moving.
Before going live, the squad conducts a number of dry runs on the compound.
Brothers, come in!
They'll come in, clear the objective, and then based on the feedback from the unit and the combat trainer that's with them is whether or not they are safe enough to go live.
Enemy on this side.
Each unit has a standard operation procedure. They go by call signs, verbal, hand-arm signals.
Move! Room clear! Hey, go in through the hatch, let them in! Go!
Status!
Room clear, forward!
Once the team has rehearsed their maneuver, it's time to load up for the live fire run. The Bradleys pull into a position on a hill overlooking Puma 1, and SHIN soldiers dismount. As the soldiers close in on the Puma 1 compound, the Bradleys take their position on a ridge beside the heavy Abrams tank. Just before SHIN and his squad tear up the compound, the big guns open fire. The armored takes turns firing their 25mm cannon and the tank's 120mm gun. After each vehicle fires, it pulls back and another rolls into position. Now, the dismounts take over. One by one, the fire teams make their way through the compound and take down their targets. In less than 5 minutes, the compound is clear.
How do you think that your movement went from the dismount point to your entry point?
Distance between teams was pretty good. We did a deliberate attack. That was pretty all right, like the distance between us and the other guys in front of us. So by far, I did pretty good.
All right, what I saw ducks in a row.
Roger.
Moving up. Now, it's not so much graded. We actually try to give them pointers, try to coach them, mentor them, and give them different avenues of approach. Because everybody has a different way and how to fight in urban operations. And Specialist Banquet, what do you think of your squad's marksmanship?
Oh, we were hot. We were hot. Hitting our marks. We came in hot and did what we had to do.
Good job, gentlemen. I would say, yes, this really helps for some of these young soldiers that just came in to see, to prepare what they're about to get into. Security's out to the entrance. Oh, on the exit. Not only prepare you for the upcoming events, such as deployments, train some of these new soldiers to what are you expecting when you go down range, down range, like down to Iraq or Afghanistan. We just train for the worst case scenario.
As the 4-1 Cavalry mounts up and heads out for their next training mission, back at Medina Jabal, Captain Rivera is preparing to spring another trap for the soldiers of the 1st Armored Division. An ambush that will push a young platoon leader to the limit.
Come on, let's go! Give me right down here, start!
Medina Jabal, 1 p.m. The soldiers of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment prepare to stage another battle at the U.S. Army's National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California. In a few minutes, this street will become a war zone. Once again, troops under the command of Lieutenant Eric Ernest will be conducting a key leader engagement, which means they'll be working with Medina Jabal's leadership and the Iraqi police, or IPs as the soldiers call them. But when the shooting starts, their mission will turn into an urban rescue operation. From his position, Captain Rivera prepares to trigger the firefight.
Once the opportunity arises, we'll go ahead and initiate the blast. Hey, Tower, 2-4, go ahead and initiate PRT. Over.
We had a IED go off and blow up a PRT Humvee of some other soldiers that were in there that we then began to respond to.
Armed with M4 carbines and M240 machine guns, Ernest's platoon sets up a security perimeter so that the medics can care for the wounded. Others move into position to seek out the enemy insurgents.
What the unit's doing, they're securing the area so they can provide cover before they actually pick up the casualties. What it looks like, they've set several CCPs, which is the casualty collection points. But before they can actually pick up the casualties, they'll set up security so they can get their evacuation vehicle up here.
First Lieutenant Eric Ernest is facing more stress than he ever imagined.
We're under fire, we gotta start performing care, but there's only so much we can do until we're able to get that overwhelming firepower to suppress the firing going on. So that's one of our first priorities. We get the suppressive fire and we treat it at the same time.
While Ernest's men treat the wounded and clear the city of insurgent snipers and machine guns, they face a barrage of IEDs and simulated rocket-propelled grenades. Several of the platoon's vehicles are knocked out by the explosions. More civilians have also been wounded. This presents an intense situation for Ernest's unit. In some cases, members of the 11th ACR who are playing Iraqi police officers intervene. Because the mission in Iraq requires American forces to work with local police, the training with the role players prepares them for cooperation under fire.
Tactically, we're out there first to protect the civilian populace, and if the rotational unit asks for it, then we'll also help them clear buildings, clear bridges, anything they need us to do.
The police can also step in when things start to heat up between the soldiers and the civilian population.
Sometimes we're told to hold off a little bit, you know, let it play out. Maybe they'll diffuse itself. Try and get the rotational unit to ask you for your help.
While Ernest's men prepare to evacuate the wounded and pull out of Medina Jabal, his unit is confronted by a crowd of angry locals.
After a certain amount of time, what you usually do, if the Americans take a little bit too long, like the units coming through long, what they'll do is the civilian population will come out and start chanting. you know, please leave America, just leave. You know, get out of town.
After nearly an hour, Ernest's unit pulls out of Medina Jabal.
Not too bad. A little bit of clustering with vehicles inside the kill zone, but with time, they'll manage and they'll learn how to actually provide security without clustering up in one area, producing a mass kill site for the enemy. The good thing is they've killed all our insurgents. We rarely see that.
It's my first time here. It's been a real eye-opener. It's been an amazing experience. It's probably the closest thing to real life that we're gonna get. I know I can save as many of my soldiers as possible or protect as many of the civilians in the cities that I possibly can.
Despite hitting a few snags, Ernest's platoon has passed their baptism of fire at Medina Jabal. And Ernest has proved to himself that he can lead his men into battle. Now, as the unit prepares for their final combat exercise of the day, 12 miles north, their comrades in the 29th Field Artillery are about to enter the fight with their own brand of heavy firepower. While members of the 1st Armored Division's 4th Brigade combat team tackle another simulated battle on one of Fort Irwin's urban fire lanes, their comrades in the 29th Field Artillery are fighting a very different type of battle at the National Training Center. 12 miles north of Medina Jabal, 2nd Lieutenant Mike PIOTROWSKI works out of a fire control center, while a team of artillerymen stand by with 2 massive 155mm howitzers.
I think I might have one in here.
PIOTROWSKI is a recent graduate of Xavier College and a newly minted 2nd lieutenant.
I've been in the Army almost a year now. My basic branch is military intelligence, but I wanted to get some combat arms experience. In today's real-life scenarios, artillery plays a different role in Afghanistan as it does in Iraq. In Iraq, they've been providing mostly illumination at night. The illumination will light up the battlefield, maybe scare the bad guys a little bit. In Afghanistan, they're using the light artillery in artillery's traditional role, helping our guys out on the ground forward when they need it.
PIOTROWSKI's battle station in the Fire Direction Center, or FDC, is a critical link between the forward artillery observers in the field and the gun crews in his battery. From here, he'll get the vital target coordinates he needs for his 155s. Unlike the run-and-gun tactics of the infantry, the life of an artilleryman often involves hours of waiting for a firing mission. In fact, these soldiers have been in the same spot for 7 days, living in the open under battlefield conditions. It's been a week since any of them have enjoyed a shower or a soft bed. Right now, the gunners are waiting on orders to open fire in support of a unit several miles away.
The purpose of this is just to provide indirect fires for the maneuver. We've pretty much just got 2 guns set up here, a fire direction center, and some maintenance and meteorological crew.
PIOTROWSKI's soldiers rely on one of the most powerful guns in America's arsenal, the 155mm self-propelled Paladin howitzer. The Paladin 155 is one of the most advanced artillery weapons in the world. 32 tons of solid steel. Its main gun can fire everything from high explosive shells to white phosphorus, smoke, and illumination rounds.
They've got a range with the propellant right now of 11,700 meters with a min range of 6,100 meters. We have something called a wrap round. It's a rocket-assisted projectile. Those can shoot up to 30K. And that's 19 miles.
Sergeant Booker Stein fights his war inside the belly of the beast. where he commands one of the unit's team of gunners.
This is a fuse. This is what makes it blow up. These round right here, the white phosphorus, that's very bad for whoever it lands on. Here's the breech. This tray comes out, and this lowers. Put the round up there. My #1 man, he throws the round in, he pushes the round in, closes this up, and this actually rams the round into the tube.
4863, 2205, altitude.
Artillery units like this one are called batteries. Usually a battery has 8 guns, and each gun, a crew of soldiers that do the heavy lifting.
My name's Specialist Joel Berman. I'm from Michigan, and I pull that string and it makes a loud noise. This is like my favorite part about the Army. Definitely like the live fire. It makes everything worth it.
Let's go in the hall.
Every day at work, it's the same crew. We definitely get to know each other. We always look out for each other. I mean, we help each other do our jobs. We come together as a team real well. It's kind of like a brotherhood.
Probably gonna fire 50 HE.
At 3 p.m., the unit finally gets its firing mission.
Yeah, first grid. 4863. 2205, altitude. 950. Target number.
Target number is Alpha Bravo 4205.
4205.
Lieutenant PIOTROWSKI calls out target coordinates to his gun teams as they prepare to open fire.
Fire!
When you first hear these guns go off, it kind of takes you by surprise. Sometimes it'll just make your jaw drop. You can't believe it.
You're definitely in the moment. I mean, your adrenaline gets going, and I mean, it's the best feeling you can get. I wouldn't have a different job in the Army if I could.
The massive 95-pound shells use a separate canister of propellant. These are usually carried in CATs, armored vehicles that carry all of the unit's supplies and maintenance equipment. Battery B fires off dozens of high-explosive rounds before PIOTROWSKI orders them to cease fire.
Well, we just fired a series of about 4 to 5 missions, most of them involving high-explosive missions to support the maneuver. Most of the targets that we fired hit within 30 meters of the designated target area. That's about 90 feet.
As Joel Berman and his brothers wait for another firing mission with the heavy 155s, several miles away, the brigade's support battalion prepares to enter the fight.
Get on the prone. Get over here. Get on the knee.
But instead of infantrymen or tankers, these soldiers are from service and supply companies, and they will now face the same intense battle drills as their comrades on the front lines. Fort Irwin, California, the soldiers of the legendary 1st Armored Division's 4th Brigade Combat Team are counting down the days before their units are certified and ready to deploy overseas. Known as Old Ironsides, these troops are part of a legacy that began when the 1st Armored Division fought its way through North Africa and Italy during World War II. More recently, Old Ironsides has deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
I would say right now, approximately 2/3 of my formation has combat experience, and not just combat experience, multiple tours combat experience.
It's Thursday morning, the 8th day of training for Old Ironsides. And right now, the troops of the 123rd Brigade Support Battalion are tackling the live fire range known as COT Vegas. The objective? Each of the unit's companies will move out across the desert and respond to an enemy ambush that begins with a roadside bomb. In Iraq, roadside bombs and IEDs have claimed the lives of frontline troops and support soldiers alike. Now, All soldiers must prepare for an enemy tactic that does not discriminate. Today, the troops at COT Vegas will be under the direction of Captain Everett Smith, a 20-year veteran and member of the elite 11th Cavalry.
Come all the way up to the right. I'm on what's called the gold miner team, and the gold miner team trains the brigade support battalions that come through the National Training Center. Getting his unit out here to train for sticks or for live fire.
The unit moves out across the desert. They know that at any moment, a roadside bomb might go off. But they have no idea when or where that might happen. Suddenly, the IED triggers an ambush. The company opens a covering fire into the brush to protect their comrades, as the wounded are pulled back for evacuation to a field hospital.
Of course, every unit that comes in here comes in at different skill levels. So this allows them to bring all that together in one place. And wherever they come in at their skill level, they will come out at a much higher level.
Despite a few snags, the unit of support troops and technicians pass the test that prepares them for their mission.
All right, good.
Well, first of all, soldiers will be soldiers. The only difference is the enemy, their environment, and the actual conflict that we're going through changes. But the training of the soldiers remains the same. Most of my crew are actually privates, and they're being trained the first time here at the National Training Center. And they're getting some valuable training here that is going to assist us whenever we get deployed downrange.
From house to house urban warfare to intense live fire training.
Go ahead and initiate PRT. Over.
The U.S. Army's National Training Center prepares America's fighting men and women for war.
It makes us think of the what's gonna happen next factor of, oh crap, now we gotta deal with this.
Get him inside, get him inside.
It lets us prepare here in a training environment for what we'll eventually experience downrange.
I say don't stop it, keep it coming. Soldiers such as myself and our future soldiers, this will really enhance their skill level and prepare them for what we're yet to see in the future.
In a few days, the 4th Brigade Combat Team will complete their rotation, and then the soldiers of Old Ironsides will prepare for the ultimate test. Soon, their country will send them to war. But for the men and women of the 1st Armored Division, the lessons learned at the National Training Center have left an enduring impression and have prepared them for battle, no matter what lies ahead.